Newsworks in cooperation with Eau Claire County.
It's now past 7 o'clock. Call to order this regular meeting of the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors on this Tuesday, March the 2nd. Samantha, if you're on, would you confirm the notice?
Yes, the meeting's been published.
Thank you. Will you do the roll call also?
Clerk McDonald. will
Honor
do
the
that.
flag.
Oh, sorry. Clerk McDonald.
Did you want to honor?
Want to do the honor the flag first, or
I
before
would
the roll
have
call?
by the agenda in front of me. I would. Okay. Thank you. Supervisors, we'll now do the Pledge of Allegiance. All together, please. I pledge allegiance
The flag, the United States of America,
and to
And to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
nation,
under God,
and
principle,
liberty.
liberty, and
justice for
justice for all.
Liberty.
Okay, Clerk McDonald, you are on.
Judy.
Gatlin would like to give a reflection, please.
All right, I just pulled up the agenda in front of me. Thank you for reminding me.
Sure.
Supervisor Gatlin.
Sure. I just want to get this all over with really fast.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
When I worked at UWC, occasionally I would chat with a young person and they would tell me about their weekend and sometimes say something about being bored. And I would respond with a wow. I didn't understand how anyone can be bored in this amazing life that we share. But to be fair, I had age and experience on my side. And maybe I'm amazed at things more than others because I enjoy a simple life. Even now in these times where grief and loss seem to infiltrate all our lives most every day, there are things to be amazed at and with. I am amazed at the strength of the human spirit and how people survive grief. I'm amazed at the diligence and persistence of healthcare workers. I am amazed at the astounding discovery scientists find every day. It is amazing to me that technology exists that lets me talk to and see my family who are next door or on the other side of the Pacific. I'm amazed at the beauty Mother Nature offers every day and how we survive and play in 4 very different seasons. I'm amazed at the proficiency of Dave H. in keeping up with the complex and needed network of county board communications. I am amazed at Samantha K's skills in keeping pace with Administrator Shaw and Chair Smeyer, as well as 29 personalities on this board. I'm amazed at Director Giesi's strength of mind and strength of will. It's amazing that 6:15 a.m. committee meetings are even allowed. And every once in a while, I'm even amazed that some of those students manage to graduate. Whatever your challenges, whatever your struggles, I feel a bit of amazing can find you if you ponder enough to let it in, and perhaps with it, a positive thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Clerk McDonald, you are on.
All right. Supervisor Gibson,
Present.
McKinney,
Present.
Here.
Pagonis,
Here.
Anton. Supervisor Anton.
Pardon me, Anton's wife is very, very ill, so he probably won't be responding tonight. She's very, very sick.
Okay. Supervisor Zook,
Here.
Chilson,
I think he's in Florida. I don't know if he's on or not.
all right. Stelgis,
Here.
Maury, Coffee, Supervisor Coffee, Henning,
Here.
Bates,
Here.
Russell,
Here.
Gatlin,
Present.
Smyer,
Here,
Hambuck Boyle,
Here.
Neiman,
Here.
Dunning,
Here.
Wilkie,
Here.
Anderson,
Present.
Beckfield,
Here.
Supervisor Beckfield,
He said here.
did he? Okay. All right. Schneider,
Here.
Leary,
Here.
DeLuca,
Here.
Jansen,
Here.
Schraffnagel,
Here.
Roberts,
Here.
Kronk,
Here.
and Christofferson.
Present.
I have 26 present and 3 absent.
we do have quorum. Thank you. Next is approval of the Journal of Proceedings from February the 17th, 2021. Motion,
Beckfield, so moved.
Motion to approve.
Beckfield moves, Gatlin seconds. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? We'll do this by voice vote. All those in favor of approval of the Journal of Proceedings of February 17th, 2021, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by nay. I hear no negative. It is unanimous. Did you say 26 are present, Rick McDonald?
That is correct.
Okay, 26 to 0. Thank you. Next is public comment. Do we have anyone for public comment?
I don't believe we do.
Is there anyone online who wishes to present public comment?
There was that one we got late afternoon by email. Was that one noted?
That was just written comment.
Okay.
You could send that to the board. Okay,
She did.
she did. Okay, thank you. I haven't had a chance to look at my emails since the afternoon. Thank you. Next are reports to the county board under 2.04.320. First, under oral reports, review of the comprehensive plan, Director Esslinger and Mr. Michaels. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Chair Smyer and the board. Everybody can hear me. Just a thumbs up would be. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Tonight, Matt Michaels, Senior Planner, and I are going to be presenting on file 20-2187, which is an ordinance to amend the county's comprehensive plan. It's also known as Chapter 19 in the county code. This is a 10-year plan update that's in accordance with Wisconsin Statute 66001, and this is also known as the Smart Growth legislation, originally passed by Wisconsin legislation back in October of 1999. This is the second rendition of the plan. Our first plan was adopted and effective in April of 2010 after several years of meetings, and it was a plan that we took and we updated from our 1979 land use plan. So we had that plan, the land use plan, in place for almost 30 years, and then we adopted the comprehensive plan, which we are amending, looking to amend this evening. Tonight, I want to specifically call out and mention the work of Mr. Matt Michaels, and also the Planning Steering Committee, which is also recognized in the front of the plan. As the senior planner, Matt is responsible for long range planning for the county. That's under his responsibilities. He did an outstanding job with the. Oh, I think I'm getting some feedback here. Hello? Okay. We'll just keep going. So I want to appreciate his efforts. Just a couple highlights of the makeup of the committee. The steering committee is made up of 14 individuals. 10 of those 14 represented the towns in some fashion, whether they're a town clerk, a supervisor, and or a chair. Why was this important? I mentioned this is that it's really a partnership when we work with comprehensive planning and working with our towns. Because it is a grassroots plan, we take the visions from the town and we take those visions and we incorporate those ideas, their land use plans, or their future land use plans, ultimately into our, which becomes our county plan. I want to point out one member, just for historical purposes, Mr. Dudley Smith. Mr. Dudley Smith was worked on the original land use plan in 1979. He's also assisted with various other plan updates. The latest one that he helped out with the farmland preservation, and then also the ag ordinance that was recently adopted. He was also recognized as from land conservation as a conservation farmer of the year. So Dudley also assisted with this plan update. So we appreciate having the knowledge, of our town officials, town chairs, because it is important, because it is an inclusive plan as it relates to our town partners. This is a long-term vision plan. This is a plan that we put in place. It's considering where we've been and also where we're going to be into the future. And actually, it's we plan out 20 years. We amend it every 10 years. Matt and staff will be taking a look at it annually to see if there's any modifications that are needed between those time periods. This plan gives us an opportunity. Well, the process has been inclusive and involved. Matt will be sharing a little bit about the elements in the process and the surveys and the open house and the meetings that we held. The plan it gives an opportunity for everybody to participate, including the surveys. We've had open houses, but I feel that there's other opportunities here that we can address. Before I touch on those, this is just one of probably about 8 or 10 plans that the county has through various departments. And as you sit on your standing committees, you know what those plans are. We have hazard mitigation planning, we have farmland preservation, we have the forest crop or comprehensive plan, we have the 5-year road and bridges improvement plan, we have outdoor recreational planning, we have land and water planning. The list goes on. Airport master planning, so you can see that we have a bunch of plans in a lot of areas. The comprehensive plan that's in front of you really, for the most part, does focus heavily on land use, and that's what you see almost every one of your meetings. You do have a report, a fact sheet on a rezoning petition, and oftentimes you see us or staff, Mr. Michael specifically, makes reference to the plan and the policies and objectives and the goals within that. It does include other items. It does include supporting renewable energy. I know that's an initiative of the board through the carbon neutrality resolution from a couple years ago. It also talks about broadband. We are supporting those efforts through our broadband committee right now, with Chair Mowry heading that committee. So you can see that there's a lot of plans that we have. I'm going to go back to the opportunity. An opportunity that I see that we can move towards forward with is with the recruitment of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator and the creation of the Comprehensive Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Plan. This, by having the EDI plan, it'll give the ability for departments like planning and development and other departments is to look at the lens, the equity lens, and to look at the plans to make sure that the plans are in line with the direction from the board, not only from the plan's perspective, but the strategic plan as well, and making sure that we have those inclusive and equity positions in there, and they align with the goals of the plans. And I'm not just speaking of the comprehensive plan that we're talking about tonight, but I think that would be the goal of the county and the county board to really look at all of our plans and making sure that that is as we go forward, looking forward with that. So I conclude my part. I'm going to let Matt have the bulk of the presentation tonight. But with that, I thank you for your anticipated support with the plan. There's been many hours that have been put into this effort, and I know that it's taken a while, but COVID threw us all a curveball last year. This likely would have been done last summer, but at any rate, thank you, and we look forward. We'll be available for questions if there are any.
Thank you.
All right, Chair Smyer, this is Matt Michaels. Rod kind of introduced me here. I've been kind of the project manager for this plan update. I've also worked extensively with the towns and updates with some of their plans. So those were really sort of the building blocks of this plan. It was initially back in 2010 when the original plan was drafted, and it is today as well. And what I mean by that is a lot of times we talk about, top-down government, or, we're the county, we're going to kind of talk down to the towns. And it's really, hopefully in most cases, sort of the opposite here, that the towns really have a good deal of self-determination and autonomy that allows them to, kind of chart their own destiny. And then the county kind of assists them in doing that, and assists them in developing policies to get them there, and offers advice, frankly, when things are maybe not completely in harmony, with state statute or good planning practice. Can everybody see my screen up here? Just making
Yes.
sure. Okay. You know how technology goes.
Yeah.
So I think Rod gave a good introduction to the comprehensive plan. I don't want to belabor any points that you guys are, most of you, I think, fairly well versed, at least familiar with what the plan is. The comprehensive plan in the state of Wisconsin is meant to be a guide to physical, social, and economic development of local government unit. As Rod pointed out, because we have so many plans out there, if you will, we've got so many committees and so many departments overseeing different elements. What really comes down to for planning and development is primarily the physical development, the land use, and that's really what most of us see sort of on a month-to-month basis. The plan includes a compilation of objectives, policies, goals, maps, and programs. Those programs being actions that we would want to see taken for various elements for our growth. And those include 9 required elements, and those are issues and opportunities. That's kind of the background information to what's intended to be a 20-year plan, housing element, transportation element, utilities and community facilities, ag, natural and culture resources, economic development, intergovernmental cooperation. And I alluded to that previously. A lot of that intergovernmental cooperation is between our level of government and the town level of government, which is really an essential partnership that we wish to maintain and build on here. Land use, which, as I mentioned, is kind of that key element. If you say which one is most, well, they're all very important, but which one do we typically focus on? As land use. And then implementation, those are the programs and specific actions to implement the plan. So the purpose, and Rod touched on this, is kind of evaluate where we are, where we're going, how we want to get there, and modify our course as needed, figure out what's working and not working, evaluate, review, and update all the sections of the plan to ensure that it adequately addresses the needs and desires of the community. As we know, there's a lot of stakeholders in this community, a lot of diversity in terms of the towns, their character, their population. extensive community engagement and outreach, and that's not only a legal requirement, but it's just a best practice for planning process. And I'll talk a little bit in a moment about the survey we conducted, public information outreach, and an open house meeting, as well as a website, our county website that we maintained with drafts, etc. And then the policies that are contained in the plan, it's kind of, I'd say, a hybrid between data and what we call data-driven and evidence-based. That's a term that I borrowed from our public health friends. Although what I'd call experiential knowledge or lived experience is really, and the community values are really important as well. Otherwise, there'd be really no need to reach out to the public. But frankly, when you live somewhere and that's your experience, you know better than I do what's frankly best for your community. So to recap, the plan was adopted in 2010. It's valid for 10 years. We were on track to bring this to you within that time frame, but of course, recent events have kind of delayed us a bit. Steering committee was formed, composed of town officials, as well as county and city staff. I would note that Scott Allen, who is the director of community development for the city of Eau Claire, he was a real trooper. He came to, I think, all but one of our meetings, and that was really valuable to have that lens on our process to kind of help review and guide this. So we're grateful for him participating in this, as well as all of the members of the committee who really generously gave of their time and talents and energies. The process, as I mentioned, entailed public participation, involved really a review of each element. And frankly, that becomes a little bit tedious at times, but we wanted to be, thorough as we went through it. Keeping in mind that the overall product that we have before you is really an update and revision. And the guiding principle is if it's working, we weren't going to change it to just to change it. We were going to evaluate its effectiveness, its appropriateness. Some things have to change just because of things like population growth, but by and large, the plan you see is not been heavily modified, just in a few areas, I think, to reflect current realities. Rod touched a little bit on this public participation. The steering committee, we held, I think, 11 meetings starting in June 2019, concluding with their consideration of recommending approval of this in November of last year. We had a public informational meeting, open house. Sadly, I have to say we really didn't have attendance to that. Now, this was, probably a week before the governor issued his safer at home order. Very strange timing, but nonetheless, it's one of those things that we try to be proactive in this, but to be honest, most folks, myself included, you don't really get involved in a land use plan until you get a letter in the mail that says, hey, my neighbor wants to develop his land. Then you find out about the comprehensive plan. So that's the eternal challenge that we have in this office. So we did get a recommendation from the steering committee, held a public hearing before the planning and development. When was that? December 8th, I believe. And then, our third kind of not public hearing, because this is an ordinance, is here tonight before the board. As far as availability of information, the agendas, plans, draft, etc., as well as contact information for ourselves were, made available to the public so that they could provide any comments or questions throughout this process. So kind of, what's changed, what have we looked at? We were fortunate to have the participation and assistance from our public health partners in this process. And there's, in the world of planning, the idea of health in all policies is very sort of timely. And we really took it through that lens. Public health department, kind of scrutinized it from that perspective. And to that end, they requested that we take it before the Board of Health, this draft, for their review and approval. And we did that back in August, September, I believe. So we kind of got good housekeeping seal of approval from the public health folks. Water quality is always an issue, but it's emerging as a more acute issue in the state, in this area. And that there's references to promoting groundwater modeling, which, as you know, we have the county groundwater committee that's working on just in that area. The Eau Claire River 9 key element watershed plan, multimodal transportation, sustainability, which of course is very top of mind for a lot of folks. We looked at the carbon neutrality resolution, renewable energy, how we perhaps might promote that. And keep in mind, the whole plan is really meant to be high level. It's not meant to be what I'd call prescriptive, like perhaps a zoning ordinance would be. It perhaps alludes to these issues. What it's meant to do is give enough policy direction to help decision makers understand what the sort of vision and direction that the county would like to go, without taking away the discretion and decision-making ability from those, from the leadership. So it's, like I say, it's a general plan. Housing, those are, of course, very important issues. The quality of housing, affordability, which is a very big challenge, the safety of housing, farmland preservation of rural economies and communities, very important. I'll show you in a moment. Our county is about 90% plus bona fide rural county. And it's easy to forget for those of us who live in a more urban or suburban setting that this is very much a rural county. I would say this plan for land use is as much about what it's meant not to allow as what it promotes. And by that, I mean preservation of farmland, rural uses, very much limiting what we call non-farm development is really important in this plan. Education, economic development, been having a lot of conversations internally about, perhaps a better, more robust economic development strategy for the county. Broadband infrastructure, this is a good example where the county has made that a priority and has created a standing, or not standing committee, but what are we calling that, right? A subcommittee to really address that issue specifically. And then intergovernmental cooperation, which I alluded to as being really part and parcel of what we do in this office pretty much every day. So we did develop a survey, administered that to the community, primarily through a website, but of course there's folks who don't have access or aren't comfortable with that, so we made paper copies available. We did issue a press release and all the usual rigmarole, and got somewhere around 300 survey results. And we wanted to do two things. One was really kind of see what had perhaps changed since 10 years ago in terms of people's priorities and values, issues that they see as, is important, as well as just kind of get a feel for what, what those top issues are for people. And by and large, what we found, so if you look at, I believe, Appendix A of the plan, it contains a summary of all the responses we received. By and large, I'd say the cup is half full from the community standpoint, meaning that I think most people would consider the quality of life, their environment, et cetera, as being generally pretty good. Of course, like anything, there's room for improvement. But that said, I think people are pretty happy with the county and the overall direction we're going. So that to us is informative in terms of, justifying, I guess, keeping a lot of the policies that we've had in place going forward, especially as keeping in mind this is for a rural population. We want to make sure that people are, kind of maintaining more of a rural lifestyle in the unincorporated areas as opposed to, city of Eau Claire, et cetera. So future land use, if you look at this map, the beige areas here and the green areas, that's a county forest. So this is what I was referring to as 90% of the county. So the white areas here, those are incorporated areas, city of Eau Claire and Altoona. The yellow areas are kind of the suburban areas, 93 corridor, 37, 12. The areas that I have circled in black are areas that the individual towns town of Washington here, these two areas, and then the town of Union had reviewed and made some changes to their plan. And the agreement that we kind of made is that because we were kind of the assistants to those plans, we had a chance to review them and vet them, I guess, that we would basically put them into our plan and propose them. And just so you know what they are, there was some tweaking or realignment of commercial uses here along 93. This area in here, this is what we call the transitional area between the more rural residential and the rural lands. There were some tweaks, some major tweaks in here. And then along here, and Supervisor Stelgis was a part of this process in the town of Washington of actually designating a fairly good portion of land, including his land, to rural lands. And that's really in interest of preservation of the Eau Claire River watershed, preventing undue harm, I guess, to that ecosystem there. So implementation, I'm almost done here. Chapter 4, what we did is we took a laundry list of plan implementation things, steps, if you will, and we put it into a matrix, a tabular format, as you see here. The advantages being not only is it more concise and readable, but it also provides some direction in terms of, as you see here, the county leads, other partners involved, other plans, as Rod indicated, that are related to it. We've got, dozen more plans that we use, and then how it relates, the discipline we have is it has to relate to a goal, objective, or policy of the plan. We can't just put it in because we want to put it in. It needs to relate to the plan. So we spent some time on that. And as we go through time here, each year we'd like to kind of oversee, some implementation here. I'd honestly say a plan's only as good as its ability to be implemented. Otherwise, it's just good reading. Well, it's not even good reading material. So hopefully as we move forward, we'll have some ability to see some of these things take place. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these things are already happening, but this just kind of gives, again, a high level framework to that. Highlights of the amendments, and this is in my fact sheet as well, but we started out by conducting a SWOT analysis, which I think a lot of you guys know, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, updated the vision statement. It was too long. It needed to be a little bit tighter and more concise. Reviewed and updated all the goals, objectives, policies. Reviewed, meaning a lot of them were reviewed and left as is. Some were changed. Reviewed and updated the future land use designations and the policies, which is sort of the bread and butter of the plan. Revised and reformatted those implementation actions like I showed you. Updated the background for it. So if you look at by volume, chapter 5, the background and demographic information, that's the largest part of the plan. And that's mostly behind the scenes work, but that informs, when I said we try to be data driven, that's the data that drives the policies. And then we kind of dovetail that with the input we get from real people to come up with policy. Then we talked about the survey, update future land use map to be in harmony with the town maps, as I discussed. We reformat the document to make it a little bit more hopefully readable and user friendly, and then put in new pictures, kind of aesthetic or quality of life type improvements to make it a little bit. The old plan looks like a 10-year-old plan. This hopefully looks more like a 2021 plan. So that's the update that we propose. Here's just the approval process. I mentioned we started the whole process back in June of 2019. Our steering committee looked at it on 2nd November, passed a resolution supporting the plan. We did have to have a 30-day notice for the P&D committee, which was held on Tuesday, 8th of December. They recommended approval of that. Then the county board's first reading, of course, no action, was on February 16th. Then here we are tonight on March 2nd. So recommendation, just to reiterate, the City County Board of Health recommends approval. The Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee also recommended approval, and Committee on Planning and Development additionally recommended approval. So here we are before you tonight. So as Rod indicated, both he and I are available for any questions.
Any questions? Discussion.
Schneider with a question.
Supervisor Schneider.
Looks like a fine and noble plan. When we get around in a few months to talking about approving a landfill contract expansion, could we have you back to talk about specific considerations that we ought to be thinking about as relates to the plan? Because right now it's kind of theoretical in my head.
Yeah, I mean, keeping in mind the landfill itself, you know, has its own, I believe, 2 committees devoted just to issues related there too. There are a number of, you know, mentions or policies within the plan that could be, I think, utilized as evaluative sort of guidance. There's no statement there that says we should or shouldn't expand the landfill. There are, however, policies in the plan that speak to land use compatibility, specifically related to the landfill. There's numerous policies that speak to the environmental integrity in terms of protection of surface and subsurface waters, you know, groundwater. So in terms of that framework, it's certainly there. And in terms of a guidance document, I believe it does certainly have some value. What I would say is I'm not in a position either of knowledge or authority to stand as kind of a subject matter expert, nor someone who can advocate really one way or another on it. But in terms of my area of purview or expertise, you know, I could certainly represent what's in there as guidance for, you know, for you guys to make decisions. But I would have to, you know, to be honest, I would have to tread a careful line because this is an ongoing, I have to respect that this is an ongoing process. I have not been part of this nor invited into this process to kind of, you know, advise in terms of policy that the county should adopt. Certainly there are, you know, there's numerous issues with that. And they certainly touch upon things that are related to this plan. But again, I would go back to this plan is intended to be high level, to be sort of the 30,000 foot version. Once you guys get to a vote about something as specific as a landfill, you're dealing with a lot more specifics. So that would be my only sort of caveat.
Just as a point of information, I've asked Administrator Schaaf to place on the agenda of our next county board an oral report regarding the landfill, just to provide the information to the county board. Other questions or discussion?
Yes, Chair Smyer.
Supervisor Maury.
Yes, I am amazed at the amount of work that's gone into this plan, and it's been very open and transparent. And I have to admit, I'm not that familiar with all the details of the plan, but I just want to ask that I'm wondering if sometimes as a county board supervisor, we're asked to vote on like zoning decisions that are perhaps missing the longer range goal. I know that, for example, it seems like in many respects we are emphasizing the preservation of farmland over things like wooded areas and streams and marshland, and that maybe is it possible we're losing sight of the importance of having environmental corridors for wildlife and for migration of birds and other animals. So I just, and maybe that's in the plan. I read it in all its entirety, but I want to make that comment because I think there's a lot of development pressure on us as a county, and I want to make decisions that are in the best interest of the long-term preservation of not only human life but wildlife.
Yeah. Yeah. Matt, I'll take the first crack at that. But yeah, Supervisor Mallory, one of the things that I think we can get at to assist you and to how this plan applies, and we've talked about this at our committee level, and Supervisor Gibson, and I think even Chair Smyer has encouraged us. We held off on this bringing it forward to it, and kind of the next steps as we see it is really breaking down how do we truly apply the plan. I think is what I'm hearing is that how do you apply it? How do you really get into applying those, from the different, when we bring a rezoning petition, and what does the plan what does the plan mean, and does it speak on different topics? Because I think when you talk about environmental corridors, Matt just mentioned we do have other ordinances that are that we apply through our office, whether it's erosion control, stormwater ordinance. We have environmentally sensitive areas that we provide protection for when we do subdivision platting and certified survey maps. Those are the things that we get a little bit further down in the technical review when we get those developments. I think taking a little bit higher back look, taking a step back, and how do we actually apply that, and having some working sessions with this board, I think will help us, bring that out and how we apply the different sections and the goals and policies moving forward with the initial change request. And then we understand and how we put those, once we get that development plan, what does that next step look like, and the reviews that go into that, and the additional permitting that's there.
Supervisor Maury?
That would be helpful, that we continue to work in that collaborative manner and get more input from the Planning and Development Committee on specific rezoning requests.
Thank you.
Chair Smyer, if I may just quickly responding to Supervisor Maury, I can, without getting into the weeds of the plan, I can respond in the affirmative that we do have policies related to things like wildlife corridors, et cetera, that are in there. I think the sort of the art behind the science, though, as Rod indicated, is figuring, kind of giving you guys some guidance of, this is sort of a user's guide. This is how we use it in practice. Because frankly, if you just sort of cherry pick it, you can come up with a lot of different conclusions that may not be right on the mark of what's intended. So yeah, I would definitely concur with Rod that we'd love to come before you and just kind of walk through some things and give you guys some direction on, how to best implement the plan.
And it may not even be in front, it may not be like an oral report. It may be, we were thinking, just troubleshooting this, maybe it's a working session before the board meets. And if you want to learn more, we can be available. You can submit questions. We can go over, general connectivity between this and our reports and what it means for your decision making. So that's what I'm offering from a planning part. And I know our committee has also asked, for that as well.
We'll consider putting that on a future agenda and consider your suggestion of a working group. We have some hands raised. Supervisor Knight, followed by Supervisor Boyle, followed by Supervisor Roberts. Supervisor Knight.
Yeah, this is Joe Knight. I guess either Matt or Rod could respond to this. Could you talk a little bit broadly about the relationship between the plan and zoning? It seemed like when I was on planning and development that the existing plan then seemed to always trump zoning. And I wasn't always sure and sometimes the zoning wasn't very good. Sometimes you'd have prime, something zoned as prime ag land that had poor soil or was covered with trees or a poor slope. But it does seem that the comprehensive plan always trumped the zoning.
Well, actually, Rod, I can take this.
Yep, go ahead.
So Supervisor Knight, actually the way it's constructed is the comprehensive plan provides the framework or guidance for the zoning ordinance. When it comes down to law, what really trumps everything is the zoning ordinance. That is the legal document, if you will, just like any county ordinance. keeping in mind the comprehensive plan it's adopted by ordinance, but it's not in itself a regulation. And I take that statement right out of the statute. So when push comes to shove, we always defer to zoning. But what I mean by that is we could have something planned for low density residential, but if those folks have commercial zoning on the ground, we legally would respect that. But what it does is gives us a future guide for land use. So if someone comes to us with an idea for a use or change of land use that requires like a rezoning, then that becomes the comprehensive plan becomes our guide. So I don't know, did that help at all?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
And the other part of it, and I understand what you're saying, Supervisor Knight, as it relates to, sometimes the farmland doesn't align up with our farmland preservation plan. And yes, I would recognize that we have some, the next plan that we would likely focus in on in the 5-year review is our farmland preservation plan, and really taking a look at some of our lands that we've included in there that probably, like you said, they don't align with the soil conditions, slope conditions. They may not be productive as we describe, prime 1, 2, or 3 soils. So there we, and it does get confusing because they're identified in the farmland preservation as soils or properties that we want to protect or soils that we want to protect, but yet they don't align with the actual site conditions. So we're going to take a closer look at that, and I understand where some of that could lead to some confusion as well. So thank you for the comment.
Supervisor Humboldt-Boyle.
Hi, I just wanted to quantify a description under the energies, utilities, and community facilities when you head down to where it talks about K-12 schools. I just wanted to quantify that right now in the Eau Claire Area School District, they are serving almost 900 preschoolers now, and since the conception of 4K over 10 years ago. So you might want to quantify that description as PK-12 schools, because truly our buildings and what we're doing now has to take that into consideration as well. Most of them are in 4K programs in childcare, but that still does impact the community. So I just wanted to make that clear.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Taking notes.
Supervisor Roberts.
Yes. Previously, well, actually earlier in this presentation, you mentioned an EDI plan standing for equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm wondering if you're including any sort of indices in here, perhaps like the MEI, for evaluating yourself and potentially even comping yourself versus similar sized communities.
I could take that one, Matt. At this point, we don't have those components in the plan. What I noted is that what we want to do is align ourselves with this, align this plan with when we onboard the new position and we really get into looking at the EDI plan, and how does that infiltrate into the other plans, and how do we, we would have those measures. I connected with a couple of our counties, Marathon County, along with Kelly or Outagamie County. Those are the 2 counties right now that has the equity lens, at least somewhat, in their comprehensive plans. All right, so we have somewhat of a kind of a framework to follow, but it's, I wouldn't say it's going to be, well, we have it's uncharted waters right now. I think, right, with even Wisconsin Counties Association is just talking about this recently. I know Administrator Schaaf has shared some information with me as well, and I know that it's a trend that we're all going to be working on. And as I indicated earlier, that would be my my promise to the board, is that when we get the plan put together, is that we go back through the comprehensive plan, and to look at incorporating those policies that ultimately this board, as I understand, will ultimately adopt.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Kronk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was kind of to tag along with Supervisor Roberts, and you may also want to check Milwaukee County as well as part of their plan. As we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion, you kind of have referenced this position that I don't think has been filled, and I'm wondering when you had mentioned earlier, and I apologize if I missed what you said, but you said annually this is reviewed by a couple of people. Is it possible then that as this develops, we have more community input at that time related to equity and diversity and inclusion, as well as looking at some of the historical aspects of our county land use and housing policies and codes that we may not want to continue to perpetuate? So as we're planning for the future and sort of the long term, we have to look at where we've been and what we certainly don't want to continue, and perhaps the effects that has been on our county residents. That's kind of my first question. So if we adopt this plan and then we have this position that you're alluding to filled between the city and the county, how do we, I don't want to leave this to one person, but how do we incorporate or engage more community centering in this comprehensive plan through a more diverse lens? That's my first question. The second question is, as Supervisor Hambeck-Boyle kind of pointed out about the schools, and we know you said that there was also some engagement from the city. I'm wondering if this has been looked at through perhaps the City Housing Opportunities Commission, as well as our potential Shared Services Commission, that I'm not exactly sure where that is. Because this is comprehensive, so I'm wondering if that collaboration, we want to be very collaborative, and I do appreciate all the work that's gone into this, if that's been a consideration to look at that through the Shared Services Committee.
As it relates to, I'll hit the first one. As it the position that's currently being recruited for, the timeline to fill that, I'm not going to be engaged in that. That's a shared commission, a shared position between the city and the county. My guess it's probably a month to 2 months out that person would get here. One of the tasks is to create that EDI plan, and as I look through the position description, and as my understanding for the program is that position is we'll be addressing things internally as far as an organization from a county's employee standpoint, both from the city and the county, but then also taking the program areas and aligning that with the county's and the city's strategic plan and the goals that you as elected officials set for us, for program areas, for departments as we go through and administer our programs, and then through kind of in partnership, then we start to look at our individual plans that we have. And like I said, we have many plans throughout the county. And I would think that it's just not going to be, the comprehensive plan doesn't umbrella all the plans that the county has. And I think Matt tried to get at that one stage. When I look at the, Matt and I just had a discussion, he was sharing that in other states, this would be called a general plan, and it's really more aligning with land use policies and how you give direction for. This would be, my take, it would be when those items, when those plans and are set, is that it may be in a year, it may be in 2 years. I don't know what that process looks like because it's not mapped out yet. We don't have that person here, but when that person does get hired and sets foot here, I'm anticipating that department heads, supervisors, and I think there's already a commission or a committee that has been formed to take a look at. We've done some surveys within the county just to kind of really basic, try to understand what trends are happening right now. Those would be given, and department heads and departments would be encouraged to stay, hey, we need to take a look at our plans and be required to do that. And it would be all the plans, not only the comprehensive plan, it'd be the hazard mitigation plan, farmland preservation. You know, these are just some plans that come to my mind that we have, you know, through that lens that you speak of. I'm going to, and I think when we look at comparing ourselves, I think we have to, in all light, in all fairness, the plans that we have are generally going to be specifically the county comprehensive plan is for the rural area. The rural area is going to function and feel much better or much different than a urban centric type of, you know, the city of Eau Claire, for example, where the services are actually in place, transportation, the proximity to services that to employers, you know, those types. You know, we would have to, you know, and I definitely think that we need to have that lens through, you know, working with our agricultural, you know, the population that we have in our rural areas, and what are those? They may be different a little bit, perhaps, than the lens that we have in an urban setting. Housing is going to be different. We don't necessarily, we're probably not going to have the high density housing. It's not going to be on transportation routes as we do in the city. So some of it may be different. So comparing, and I like your idea, because there's probably some good ideas with Milwaukee County, but generally speaking, Milwaukee is a heavily urbanized area. So I would be looking at our peers to like Outagamie County, Marathon, those counties that have already had taken this lens and applied it. So those would be just my initial takes on just to reply to your 2 points there, and we can talk offline, definitely, Supervisor Cronk, if you wanted to, you know, have a deeper discussion or take a deeper dive in this. I'd be more than happy to do that as well.
Thank you. Supervisor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a couple of questions related to the SWOT analysis, but I'm thinking more about the Planning and Development Department. Under threats, I was wondering if there's any discussion of climate change as a threat. I know we're trying to implement sustainability and some efforts but I'm thinking about some parts of Wisconsin that have been hit by flooding. Are there other threats that we should be concerned about that you think you're going to be addressing?
Yeah.
The other thing under threats was the loss of local control. Are there any particular areas of local control related to our rural areas that are particularly problematic?
So with regards to the SWOT analysis, keep in mind this was a team exercise, meaning we had a bunch of folks there. It was really a brainstorm, and by that I mean I didn't edit it for, you know, clarity or you know, what I thought was worthy. Okay. Nonetheless, you know, with regard to your first point, there are policies in the plan that are directly focused on those issues of climate, and with reference specifically to the county's or resolution to carbon neutrality by 2050, and there's some actions in there related there too. With regard to the other part, which was loss of local control, I'll just be quite candid. I'm not 100% even certain what was intended. That was not generate. It was not a point that I generated, so I'm a little reluctant to even try to explain, you know, what was truly intended there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisors, please take your hands down. I see a hand raised. Supervisor Bates.
Thank you. I did wonder whether or not this plan, I don't see any representation throughout this document of our Hmong population or minorities. I'm wondering if there will be an opportunity for some, considering we have a lot of Hmong involved in agriculture, will there be an opportunity for them to take a look at this, or to have some kind of a conversation with them so they are more aware of whatever is going to be transpiring here, and maybe even some input?
Certainly, yeah. You know, when we went out for the notification of folks, we tried to, you know, cast a wide net. Truthfully, we didn't, you know, have anything translated or anything, and perhaps that would be something we would want to do if we made a focused, concerted effort towards that individual population. So I certainly think that's a good idea. We, you know, go forward. Rod, did you?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I note on it, we did have the town chair for the town of Union, Jennifer Meyer, who represents in the town of Union. We have a large Hmong community, agricultural community in that area. So, albeit that, you know, I would probably echo what Matt says, that, you know, not directly, but maybe indirectly through through the voice of a supervisor, or I mean of a town chair, recognizing all the issues that that may be on topic there, and certainly that is I can't think of specific items in our farmland preservation area, but I definitely would think that that would be an area that we would be, especially if as it relates really specifically to agricultural, you know, that would be an area that we could consider too.
Thank you. For the second
I
time,
live in the town of Union.
sorry. Sorry, I cut you off, Supervisor Bates.
I live in the town of Union, so that was my concern.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Cronk for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to kind of take off of Supervisor Bates' question, one of my hesitancies is always to, you know, vote yes on a plan where that input hasn't occurred that creates the plan.
I can respond to that. You know, I think it's frankly, it's a lot similar to your meetings. You get, you know, we live in a representative democracy, not always a direct democracy. And by that, I mean the 14 members of the steering committee represented our stakeholders through their elected representatives. Further, this plan is driven, for example, Town of Union updated their plan about 4 years ago. I was part of that. Their individual, so essentially what we're doing is we're folding into their plan process, which had their own outreach. All I can say is it's as extensive as we can possibly muster, but I would say that, you know, by the same token, you guys, you know, that said, it can always be improved. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that it's the same thing. I mean, people tend to be more reactive than proactive. And to that extent, I'm always open to, you know, new and better ways to do that. But I would represent that this plan is driven by the stakeholders that it represents to, you know, to apply to. So,
Thank you. I see no other hands raised. I see no
May
other
I?
hands being waved. Sorry.
May I ask a clarifying question? Just a point of clarification to that response?
Supervisor Cronk, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So are you saying then that if in a year there was additional responses, as you said, there's always, you know, room for improvement of centering community. If that was the case, that this plan in a year could change, we don't have to wait for the 5.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would describe it as intended to be sort of a living document, to be responsive to changes that happen in the community, to issues that are brought up. For example, since the last iteration of the plan, a lot of these issues that we're discussing here tonight are coming to the forefront in terms of, you know, the conversations and issues. If something comes forward from the community, I'm just saying that typically the way it comes forward is not directly from the residents of the county to, you know, our level or the board. It comes through their towns. And so for us, you know, keeping those partnerships with the towns as sort of our key conduit of getting that information, getting the issues. Like Rod said, Jennifer Meyer from the Town of Union, she calls us frequently with the issues that her constituents are bringing forth to her. So we want it to be an up and down, back and forth communication. And when we see issues, we certainly tag those for, hey, these are things, to answer your question, we can definitely revisit these things sooner than later. We've already got a couple things on our radar. So I do want everyone to be comfortable. You're not voting into a plan that's set in stone for the next 10 years. You're voting for, a document that can be revisited as needed and is intended to hopefully at a minimum be looked at, annually to kind of, give that litmus test of, is this working or what are we missing?
And just one more thing on that. Matt mentioned that we worked with the Town of Union 3 to 4 years ago. We have worked with the Town of Washington. We're going to be working with Pleasant Valley. We've worked with Seymour just as of recent of 2 years ago. Drammen has reached out. So we do work closely and assist the towns with updating their plans. So we're hearing those issues and we're close with our town. It is really, I always say it, this in our office is about shipbuilding. We build relationships, we maintain, partnerships with our town, and we're our town partners. And we're really, I take that, to, and our committee does as well. They're the eyes and ears, they're the ones that are on the ground. They can tell us, we can talk to them and they give us ideas and, hey, this is moving, this is not working. Maybe we really got to revisit a particular planning district or an area that we got to revamp. So I echo what Matt said. Yes, it would be a living document, something that we are able to and capable of amending or bringing to the, and even pulling together our steering committee to analyze and look at it. And like I said, I'm supportive of the EDI, looking at that plan and looking at equity and inclusion there, what that means through a planning lens and how do we apply that, through in the comprehensive plan. And like, the other thing is how do we apply that? And I'm waiting for a direction. I just don't want to forge ahead and then all of a sudden we get there and it's like, oh geez, you guys missed you were off target here. Let's get you back here. Let's get you following the guidelines. So I think we're in a good shape. And again, I'll be quiet, but I would just ask for your support this evening.
Thank you. Supervisor Bates, I'd like to move on because this item comes up later on our agenda.
One quick comment, maybe we'll put that a little at ease. When Town of Union first began to have issues with festivals, it was planning and developing that came in and they worked with us through that. So I think, you're not going to cover everything with this because things come up, but it's a great guidance.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Essinger and Mr. Michaels. We'll now move on to the next oral report from Director Johnson. Report on the plowing policy. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Smeyer. Very excited to be here tonight to share a high-level review of our winter operations. I know on the agenda it does say the word policy, which hopefully you're not too scared of that word, but we won't spend too much time on policy per se. But looking at March 2nd, we've got 40-degree temperatures and 50s on the way. It's been a light winter to say the least, but still a challenge every year with winter operations. And I just wanted to share some information with the county board on what it is we do with our partnership with the state and how we provide services on our county roads. What we'll be reviewing here tonight is just the state snow removal level of service and plow routes. I kind of joke about this, but I don't know if people really see our plow routes too often, like a top secret document, so they know how we go out and plow these roads. But we're going to review those tonight. Our snow removal policy on the county snow removal level of service and plow routes, and then dip into our sustainable winter practices that we do have here at our highway department. So on our state highways, we have 5 levels of service here in the state of Wisconsin throughout the state. And in Eau Claire County, there are 5 levels in Eau Claire County. So as we partner with our state, and we are the only state in the nation here that has a relationship where the county does provide the winter maintenance and summer maintenance on the state highway system. It does perform very efficiently. We are a lot more effective with our costs compared to other states in the Midwest, and we pride ourselves on this relationship. And on the state level, we have a highway maintenance manual you'll see over here that does provide guidance on everything we do. A very robust manual that we developed with the DOT, with our Wisconsin County Highway Association and Wisconsin County Association. To show a little more detail there, these are the 5 categories, and I apologize, the map is from the DOT's website, but they maintain that. You can see the different colors here. Category 1 all the way down to 5, and we have them all. Our highest level, which is probably a little different than what you would think of, is actually the bypass and Claremont Avenue is a Category 1 road here in Eau Claire County. The interstate is a Category 2, which means we do provide a level of service that is higher on our Claremont Avenue and the bypass due to the traffic volumes that are higher than the interstate here in Eau Claire County. And I think everybody is well aware of the bypass and the ramps and the challenges we have during the winter. And it does require a high level of service. So as you go down through the map, you can see the Category 3 roads, the North Crossing, and some of our Highway 93 and 37 and Highway 12. And then we transition to Category 4 roads as we get out of the urban, suburban area of Eau Claire into just Category 5 roads. So, this map shows the 24-hour service that we provide on the state system versus 18 hours. Again, you can see that we do have a high volume of 24-hour service roads or the state highways here in Eau Claire County, which requires us to have staff on around the clock during winter events. Many counties around us do not have the 24-hour service like you see here. Going into county snow removal, our snow removal policy, I did highlight just some areas to look at here rather than reading everything, but our decision to begin snow removal comes at a multitude of factors. We look at the current roadway conditions, weather conditions, the forecast, and time of day. So it's unique every time a storm comes through and how we address that, whether there's wind and drifting. General, and then another thing I want to make sure everyone knows is given the overall size of Eau Claire County, it is possible to have a trace of snow in the north side and several inches in the south side of the county. So that also makes it a challenge demographically in regards to the snowstorms. The thing I want to point out is this last sentence here. Snow removal will begin on county roads when there is 2 inches of accumulation or more. That became one of the reasons at our highway committee meeting recently. Under my report, we were discussing our winter operations. We seldomly get complaints on our county system, but we did receive a snowfall that was just shy of 2 inches on a Saturday night into Sunday. And per our policy, we did not plow those roads. There were quite a few upset people using our roads in the public there that issued complaints to our department. And so we've been reviewing this at our committee level, and this brought forward, thanks to Chair Smyer and Chair Henning, that we should just educate our county board on what we do and why. And we do have this 2-inch snowfall policy in place right now. So, and to build off of that, we do want to maintain a passable roadway. And a passable roadway is defined as a surface that's free from drifts, ridges, and ice and snowpack. And it does not say that a little accumulation means the road's not passable. To have a little accumulation on the road here in Wisconsin is deemed passable. We just have to drive at reasonable speeds, and that seems to be our biggest challenge here is the reasonable speed. And if you look at reasonable speed, it's basically the speed that a vehicle can travel without losing traction. That seems to be our biggest issue on the bypass, and a lot of issues on our highways, if you talk to our sheriff's department, is too fast for conditions. People not slowing down in the wintertime, especially on the first snowfall or two. So that's our policy on our county snow removal. But our level of service and hours of operation, I also want to highlight that quickly for the board. We have 3 levels or classes in our snow removal policy here at Eau Claire County. The first class, class 1 roads, are, as I highlighted, state roads, state routes. These are required to the DOT requirements that I showed you, the service requirements I already showed you with our highway maintenance manual. We have 24-hour levels of service as well as 18 hours. So those are our class 1 roads in our policy, and we identify them as state roads. The next thing, we go off of our class 2 roads, and this is where we start looking at county trunk highways around our urban area, or our major collectors, such as R in Augusta, D in Fall Creek, and then Highway Q and everything around the city of Eau Claire. County class 2 roads are 1,000 vehicles or more per day. And based off of that, we define our service on those class 2 roads. On class 3 roads, those are vehicle roads where we have less than 1,000 vehicles per day. And that is basically 70% of our county highways. So when you look at that, you can see that we're going out at 4 a.m. to 6 p.m. on those roads. We do have emergency services for the sheriff's department or ambulance or any medical reason. We provide vehicle support for those. But we do provide 4 a.m. to 6 p.m. and that's typical on our county roads for plowing. Here's a map of our plow routes. I know it's real busy, I apologize, but this is the map of Eau Claire County and the county plow routes that we have. We have 421 miles of county trunk highways. A lot of high miles there compared to most counties in the state. We have 8 sections, and then we also do provide service for the town of Union as well. So in total, we have 17 plow trucks on our county system during an event. In each section that you see, for example, 4B here, there are 4-hour plow section in 4B, and then there's a 4A right here. So there's 2 plow trucks and operators out plowing, and it takes 4 hours each. If we are short an operator, and a couple times this winter we have been, it takes 8 hours to plow an entire number 4 section. So sometimes we do get calls in regards to, well, the plow truck hasn't come through yet, and even in 4 hours with snow coming down, it's hard to tell that. But that's our current level of service per plow routes. Now I wanted to dive into our sustainable winter practices here to help explain some of the reasons why we have our policy in place for 2-inch snowfall. And also the other 3 main considerations are budgetary considerations, public need and expectation, and then environmental impacts. So for budgetary considerations, in for this year, we have a budgeted winter maintenance cost of $1.12 million to provide the service on the map you just saw previously. I want to share with the county board that the cost of salt right now is $80 per ton, and it's going to continue to increase. And for those of you that were on the WCA Legislative Exchange this morning, you saw during Dan Barr's presentation, there is actually an increase in the governor's budget just because of the salt prices that are increasing, and then the salt mines that are closing. Cargill is actually closing their salt mine to the south of here. And those prices are going to continue to go up. The cost of asphalt is $49 a ton. So that is what I really try to educate most people on. The salt is a chloride. It goes into our environment, our water table. It does not degrade. Chlorides are permanent contaminants. We'll go into that more in a little bit. And in the summertime, I think new roads are what we want to do. So we're trying to reduce the use of salt as much as possible and provide new highway pavements for our public in the summer. Just so the county board knows, from 2018 to 2020, our average salt use on the county system is 800 tons of salt per winter. That's just for comparison on our state roads, the state usage is about 10,000 tons. So we're very efficient with our salt use on our county. We do also hear quite a bit from our neighboring counties and the people that come from neighboring counties in Eau Claire where the roads are not as bare or not as well kept in the winter as the surrounding counties. And a lot of that has to do with the amount of salt we use. The next sustainable practice is public need and expectation. Safe roads to travel on for the movement of goods and services, as well as quality of life, is the expectation that we want to provide for the public. For their need, the need and the expectation of the public is that snow should always be plowed and not left on the road, even if there's less than 2 inches. So that's the dynamic we have, is where the 2-inch snowfall policy seems to be at a place now where if we can continue to educate the public on the impact of salt, the cost, and that if we slow down during the winter, our policy seems to be at a right balance from what I can tell from the last 5 winters here. We've only had a couple winters where we had some complaints. Otherwise, it's going very well in our rural and urban areas. Environmental impacts. When we look at chloride, road salt, water softeners, fertilizer, manure, dust suppressants like calcium chloride, things like that, those all go into the aquifers and in the lakes and streams around us. And it's beginning to become, and Hillary Dugan at the State University of Wisconsin, I've met with her at some conferences, and it's beginning to become a critical level at Minnesota and Wisconsin right now, the chloride levels. So if you look at the table, 42% of chlorides, sources of chlorides, and this is from Minnesota. They've got a lot of good information out there, but very similar to what we do on our road systems and levels of service. 42% is from, what you see here is road salt use. So this area is road salt use, and that's 42% of chlorides. So the maintenance in the highways, in the winter operations, you'll see more and more of best salting practices, smart salting, things like that, to try to reduce the environmental impact. Another concern is chlorides in lakes and streams. I loved being in the outdoors. Love taking my family and kids to the outdoors. And I think it's important to know that 1 teaspoon of salt can permanently pollute 5 gallons of water. So these are the standards for chronic and acute impacts to lakes and streams in regards to milligrams per liter of salt. And it does not take much to impact fish and aquatic wildlife or aquatic life when you look at this example here. And then the next slide, and I apologize about the clarity, is chloride in groundwater. And this is from Hillary from 2018, Hillary Dugan there. If you look at the map, our streams and lakes are beginning to get infected more and more, and especially around the cities. You can see areas where aquatic life is no longer sustainable. If you come over and look into the streams around our area, there are some streams where the chloride level is getting higher, especially down in the central, southeast area. There's quite a few impacts, but in our lakes, not as much impact in our area. Still low chloride levels, but to act now and provide the sustainable systems and winter practices that we're doing, I think will help in our area. So, and that's it, Mr. Chairman. Any questions?
Questions or discussion? Supervisor Cronk, would you please lower your hand? Thank you. Questions or discussion? Oops. Supervisor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, Mr. John, how do you track that 1,000, traffic per day? Is there some sort of a tracking device that you put up regularly, or how do you measure traffic on a daily basis?
Yeah, so we do have traffic counters that are used during the spring and summer time period. The DOT also has permanent counters in the highways that provide traffic counters. So a lot of the roads, we go out and collect that data ourselves. Some of it's just historical information. So we try to get through on all our county road system every 10 years to update the counts. But as we do our improvements, we also do traffic counts as well.
The second question I had, back when things were normal, did anyone ever have any educational booths at things like a 4-H fair or the state fair or farm technology days to help educate the public about the impact of salt on the roads and impact on streams and lakes? Did they ever do anything like that? I realize this past year was quite different and there weren't too many opportunities to do things like that, but has that been done in the past?
So right now, Greg Leonard, we work together with our land conservation department, and there's a lot of outreach and educational seminars that are sent out with Karen Fortin from Fortin Consulting, and a lot of it is from Minnesota. They seem to be, leading the way right now just because of the impacts of chloride. So we do have educational seminars that are out there. I'm not aware of any at, like you say, at the 4-H booths. I know we are there in regards to what we do for the highway to, from the highway perspective, but not in regards to education of the environment. So.
Thank you.
Supervisor Anderson, followed by Supervisor Leary.
Yes, my question is, does the use of liquid salt distribution on the roads, does that impact the amount of salt that we use up compared to the sort of traditional methods? And what kind of steps are we taking to move towards that?
Yeah, that's a good question. The salt brine, so when you see salt brine, and we're using that on our state system, and we are moving towards that technology on our county system, the efficiencies of salt brine is you're only using 22% chloride in a salt brine, whereas the rock salt is 100% calcium, sodium chloride. So you reduce the chloride amount dramatically by about 80% by using the salt brine, which is primarily water. It's just water and then 21.5% salt. So environmentally, I think the misnomer is that when you see that liquid getting poured out onto the road or sprayed onto the road, that's worse for the environment, but it's contrary to that. It's less salt in that product, and it works more effectively because rock salt needs moisture, needs H2O, needs that moisture to work. So the more salt brining and liquid application we can do, the better for the environment and the reduction of salt use.
Supervisor Leary.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to address Supervisor Russell's question about education and that sort of thing. One of the unfortunate circumstances of not being able to go and physically go check your mailbox in the county clerk's office is you will find that almost all the supervisors still have a little cup in your slot, and that's from the Rain to Rivers Coalition, which is something that the land conservation staff, Greg Leonard, and it's a whole educational endeavor that we've been working on now for several years, getting folks educated and trying to spread the news about things like chloride or, salt and so forth. So yes, and 4-H, I know I'm not on the extension committee now, but prior to all the budget cuts, I know they used to anyway, do a lot of education about this type of thing, sustainability. But like I said, when you keep cutting the staff, you don't have as much activity, but it is happening. I would also invite you to check out the county website, and it kind of touches a little bit too on the comprehensive planning. They had so many meetings where they would invite the public to come. They had articles. In fact, we have to take out paid ads in the official notices to invite people for comments. So we've been trying really hard to get public input and on a number of things, whether it's housing. In fact, we have a hearing next week, folks. So if you want to have some impact on our updated, I would invite you to our housing meeting on Monday. Anyway, but yes, we are trying very hard to continue to educate the public and invite more activity on that regard.
Thank you. Supervisor Christofferson.
Thank you, Chair Snyder. Thank you, John, for your presentation and for, educating us on the environmental effects. And it sounds like you are really doing a lot to help reduce those effects. I was just wondering if you can share with the board, do you have a ratio of how much brine you're using versus the rock salt for the county?
So we're currently using salt brine on the state. The state provided us with a salt brine maker, and we do not have that equipment on our county trucks yet. It's going to be a plan where we start to phase that equipment on our trucks as we can fiscally afford it. So we're going to be using it on our urban areas first. We're developing the rollout plan for our county routes here end of March, actually. So right now on our state system, we were able to reduce salt by the ton by 22%. And UW-Madison is running this pilot with us. There's 11 counties in this pilot in the state, and we're one of them on all liquid routes and the use of salt brine. And we've met with them, and so different counties have been able to have different savings. Jefferson County has been able to produce the highest level of savings, about 50%. And they have a new facility with proper brine making equipment. Very excited with the next couple of years to build our new facility and really ramp up the use of salt brine and reduce the salt usage on our system. So we're also doing a route optimization on our county routes as part of the new highway facility. And when we get that completed in partnership with the DOT, we'll be able to look at how we can first implement salt brining on our county routes as well.
Thank you.
Schneider with a question.
Supervisor Schneider.
Maybe really dumb, but what about sand? Do you use sand at all?
Yes, we use sand predominantly on the county system. That is why our tons of salt is very low. I do have comparisons in Dunn County. They use around 16 to 1,800 tons of salt per winter on their county roads compared to our 600 to 800. You'll see that comparison if you travel around, that our roads will be salt sanded is the term. It's 5% salt in the salt sand. We do go through a lot more of that. One downside to using a lot of salt sand is sediment in our ditches as well, though. So we're just trying to balance that out, and I'm hopeful we can reduce the use of salt sand with the addition of salt brine to become more effective with application rates.
Thank you. Supervisor Wilkie. You're muted, Supervisor Wilkie.
Helps to unmute. Good evening. Back some time ago, there was a grant we received. I don't know what they were called, but they were put on the trucks to automatically do the salting. Now, there were some of us that were pretty skeptical of that. Are we still using that method, or is it the driver that makes the determination? Or has that gone away?
Yeah, so the DOT did a pilot with a ground speed sensing system that did not work. That pilot did show that there were too many issues with that equipment and technology. So the actual application rates are dictated by a software system we use, and we provide that to the operators to set the equipment to that application rate. So.
And the operator turns it on, off, not the equipment or that what we got that grant for. Okay, I kind of figured that would happen. Okay, thank you.
I see no other hands raised. I hear no other voices. Thank you, Director Johnson. Supervisors will now move on in our agenda. Under item 7, presentation of petitions, claims, and communications, you have a letter from the town of Washington for your advisement. Moving on to section 10, reports of standing committees, commissions, and boards under 2.04.160 and second reading ordinances from the Highway Committee, file 117.
A resolution to abolish 1.0 FTE parts and inventory inventory support position and create a 1.0 FTE mechanic position.
Thank you. Motion, please.
Schneider.
Schneider moves.
Allen.
Henning seconds. Explanation, Supervisor Henning.
I think John can fill you in on that yet.
Hand off to
John.
Mr. Johnson.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. In their packet, you'll see that we have performed an analysis of our shop operation, and that was due to a vacancy in our parts and inventory support staff. Currently, we have 3 full-time positions in our parts and inventory support. After we performed an analysis of our fleet program and how we're doing there compared to our preventive maintenance and the needs upcoming with technology on our new trucks, there's a lot of actual computer systems where we're plugging in with laptops now. In less parts needs, in the past, the highway departments had lots and lots of parts. Those days are gone. We have vendors in Eau Claire area that have a lot of stuff on stock. We don't have 5 different makes and models now in our fleet anymore. So in moving forward with our vision of improving our fleet and providing preventive maintenance, this change does provide the best outlook for our department. And I would appreciate your support. One thing I did just come up with, I'm finishing my budget report, my annual report for the county currently, and we reduced our parts replacement costs by $160,000 in 2020. So we're seeing great gains there in our fleet program, and that is another reason why we're asking for this change.
Thank you. Questions or discussion? I see no hands raised, and I hear no voices. Supervisors, we will now vote. Excuse me. We will now vote on file 117. All those in favor of file 117, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Next from the Committee on Planning and Development, file 87.
An ordinance to amend section 19.01.010 of the code, adoption of the Eau Claire County, Wisconsin Comprehensive Plan.
Motion? Is that Supervisor Leary waving at me?
Dunning seconds.
Okay. All right. Moved by Supervisor Leary, second by Supervisor Dunning. Explanation. Supervisor Gibson?
Thank you, Chairman Smeyer. I think we had a very good explanation by Rod and Matt. They did an excellent job of presenting where they are at and the purpose of the comprehensive plan. So I'm not going to go on and on and on about it. If everybody caught it, it is a state law that is required for every municipality to adopt a comprehensive plan. With that being said, the county's existing comprehensive plan was adopted on April 20th of 2010 and is valid for 10 years. So this is the 10-year plan update, and as Rod pointed out, we are a little bit late because of the COVID and everything that's been going on. So I would just highly recommend approval of this plan.
Thank you. Questions or discussion?
Schneider with a question. Does this cover the city of Eau Claire as well, or do they have their own 10-year plan?
The city would have their own.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? I see no hands raised. I hear no voices. Supervisors, we will now vote on file 87. All those in favor of file 87, please. I'm hesitating here because, so should we do a roll call vote on an ordinance vote?
I probably wouldn't hurt.
Is the court counsel on?
I'm here. It's not required.
Okay.
But certainly if you want to do one, it doesn't hurt anything either.
Just for clarity, I'd like to do a roll call vote on this. So Clerk McDonald,
All right. Gibson,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Knight, Pagonis,
Yes.
Anton is gone. Zook,
Yes.
Supervisor Zook,
Yes.
Chilson is gone. Stelgis,
Yes.
and then Maury,
Yes.
Coffee, I believe is gone. Henning,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Gatlin,
Yes.
Smyer,
yes.
Hambuck Boyle,
Yes.
Neiman,
Yes.
Dunning,
Yes.
Wilkie,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Beckfield, Beckfield, all right. Schneider,
Yes.
Leary,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
Jansen,
Yes.
Schroffnagel,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Kronk,
Yes.
and Christofferson. Is
Yes.
Supervisor Beckfield present?
He wasn't earlier.
Listed as on, Clerk McDonald.
He's on. Okay, but he's
I'll
not.
unmute him here and just see if he responds.
Supervisor Beckfield? All right, so we have 25 out of 29.
That's sufficient. Thank you. Again, from the Committee on Planning and Development, file 113 for first reading.
An ordinance amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Pleasant Valley.
This is first reading. This will go on for second reading to our next county board meeting. Thank you.
No, this is for consideration.
Sorry?
Because it's a reason, this is Tim Sullivan.
Thank you.
This is for consideration tonight. It's been approved by planning and development, and our code authorizes that these rezoning petitions initially would come to the board, and then it forwarded to planning and development, and then it comes back for a vote. That's what's going on tonight.
So it's coming back for the vote tonight.
Correct.
Thank you for the clarification. Motion then. Motion.
So moved, Hambuck Boyle.
Hambuck Boyle moves.
Pagona seconds.
Pagona seconds. Thank you. Explanation, Supervisor Gibson. Do we need it?
Yes, thank you. This is to rezone 5.73 acres of land from the AP to the A2 district to provide a home site for one of the applicant's children. Land use plans, the Eau Claire County's future land use map includes the property in the rural lands, and the town of Pleasant Valley's future land use map includes the property in their rural preservation planning area. Planning and development staff, they find that the proposed rezoning request substantially conforms with the Eau Claire County's comprehensive plan. The town of Pleasant Valley considered this rezoning on February 8th and recommended approval 2-0. We held a public hearing with our planning development committee, and we voted 5-0 in favor.
Thank you. Questions or discussion? I see no hands raised. I hear no voices. Supervisors, we will now proceed to a vote on file 113. We can do, I believe we can do this one by voice vote. All those in favor of.
Say, Chairman Smyer?
Yes, sir.
For these rezonings, I guess I would prefer, just so that it's noted, a roll call vote.
No problem. We'll do a roll call vote. Clerk McDonald, please.
Gibson,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Pagonis,
Yes.
Zook,
Yes.
Chilson. Oh, Chilson's gone. Stelling,
Yes.
Mowry,
Yes.
Henning,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Gatlin,
Yes.
Smyer,
Yes.
Hambuck Boyle,
Yes.
Neiman,
Yes.
Dunning,
Yes.
Wilkie,
Yes.
Anderson, Supervisor Beckfield, Schneider,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Leary,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
Jansen, Schnappnagel,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Kronk,
Yes.
and Christofferson.
Yes.
So 25 yes.
The motion passes. Thank you. Supervisors, the last item on our agenda is under appointments. The chair has appointed to the Chippewa-St. Croix Rail Commission Supervisor Dunning. This appointment was confirmed by the Committee on Administration in its meeting this evening before the county board meeting. The chair looks for a motion to confirm.
Neiman, so moved.
Neiman moves. Who seconds?
Kronk.
I'll take Kronk. I heard she was the loudest, so I'll take Kronk.
Who made the motion? I didn't hear.
Neiman.
Neiman.
Oh.
She was the loudest also. This is kind of a clumsy way to do that, but any discussion, any questions regarding the appointment? Okay, we'll do this by voice vote. All those in favor of the appointment of Supervisor Dunning, confirming the appointment, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by nay. I think it is unanimous. Supervisors, we have reached the end of our agenda. We are now adjourned. Thank you.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and Eau Claire County.